Everybody, Kyle Goethe here from GoatFilmReviews.com and the Goat Film Reviews YouTube channel, and I've got my first reaction, to the third episode of The Acolyte, the new Star Wars series, show run by Leslie Headland and starring Amanda Stenberg. So in this third episode, we have kind of shifted gears a little bit. We've jumped back in time, 16 years before the events of the show, which actually, again, which now makes that the earliest time we've seen in I believe, definitely in live action Star Wars, is 16 years before the 87 years before The Phantom Menace. So episode begins. I actually really like when shows do this, especially when you have a limited number of episodes. You have 8, and I felt like the first 2 episodes were moving so quickly because, as we've discussed before, in those first couple episodes, we hear that May is out to kill the 4 Jedi responsible for, or that she feels is responsible for what happened. By the end of episode 2, half of them are gone. We got 6 episodes left. What are we going to do? So I like that episode 3 slows down. It jumps back in time and spends an entire episode on backstory, flashback, building. I actually really like when shows do this. You know, Lost did this occasionally, where they would just stop the series completely to do a side story and then somehow bring that back to what was going on. In fact, Mandalorian, we were just catching up on season 3 because we haven't watched that yet. And they did an entire episode about Dr. Pershing. Just stopped in the middle of the action and just jumped right into that for the entire episode. I like when the shows do this. It just kind of gives you the opportunity to kind of okay, let's dive in here. And so I think that's what the show does. It does it pretty well. Now, when they first introduced these witches, I didn't really dig it. I still don't entirely think that the presentation of that group of people worked all that well. But seeing what that was in relation to what Leslie Headland was trying to do as a showrunner was introduce a different form of Force manipulation than what the Jedi and the Sith would use it for. And that actually works pretty well for me. I like that idea that the Force is not just a Jedi-Sith thing. The Force is in all of us, because they say that all the time. The Force is part of every living human being, and yet only some people are able to wield it. Well, maybe there's some more to it than that. Maybe the way in which it can be wielded is different based on the person. So maybe the people that the Jedi think are not capable of being Jedi might actually have these witch powers that can be, I like that idea, the questions that are being asked. I think some of the stuff early on, I was like, I don't know. And maybe this is something that's been delved into in other Star Wars media that I'm just not aware of. That could be the case too. I try to keep up as much as I can, but as I just mentioned, I'm not even caught up on The Mandalorian. And I'm a huge Star Wars fan that just doesn't have time for all the crap that they keep dropping. Yeah, I like how this dives into May and Osha. We get the 2 characters together, spending time together. And from the outset, we see that tension. We see that they are told that they're similar. Oh, hi, buddy. Come here. Goku, my cat, who did not watch the show with me, is joining me here. So we get to see May and Osha spending time together, but also we see that wedge that will eventually separate them later on in the episode. I like that was done pretty well. I do think that their dialogue wasn't all that well written. It was a little clunky. It did kind of, I don't know, it felt like classic siblings fighting, but didn't really, so much of it was in the episode that I felt it kind of lost its weight as it went on. So there was some clunky dialogue here. I'm noticing that a little bit throughout some of the episodes. It's not like an episode ruiner amount of dialogue, but I thought the dialogue written for them was kind of clunky. But it was great to see the introduction of our 4 Jedi, see them back. A couple of them are back alive now and get time to dive in with them as well. So May and Osha, the story that was done with them, I thought really elevated what was going on, because it showcased to me what that wedge was that separated them. And it also showed me, through use of story and character, drove forward, which I thought was really well. That test that was done, the Jedi test, and how they each took a different route with it. I thought that was really clever, a really clever way to use traditional Star Wars mythology to drive the story forward instead of just explain a bunch of stuff. It's driving forward. I thought getting to know Saul as a younger man was a good idea. They brought him in. They showed that kind of closeness that Osha and Saul had, so that we kind of see that fatherly instinct that comes in, the parental guidance that comes in, because that is so important to the Jedi Knight Padawan, element there, is that you do have to have there has to be a closeness. There has to be a familial sense to them. It was nice seeing Indara. I was really worried Carrie-Anne Moss just get knocked off in the first 10 minutes of the show. I was like, well, that's unfortunate. But I had a feeling, I mentioned before, I had a feeling we were going to get to that. As well as, I forget the guy's name, but the guy who played Tommen Baratheon on Game of Thrones, he got to have some more time alive. I now understand why they aged him up in the previous episode. That was kind of funny. So we get to see him back in action. Really great to see Kel Naka. I just love the idea of a Wookiee Jedi. I haven't seen a Wookiee Jedi in any live action form. It's just not something I see very, it's cool. I like seeing some of these traditional races and species that we know being used in such a way. On that note, again, I don't know much about the Darth Maul race of people, but is that what May and Osha's, one of their mothers, was she of the same kind of Darth Maul kind of species? That was kind of cool. Again, it's taking these familiar elements, and especially the love that Leslie Hillen seems to have, or the respect that she seems to have for the prequels, and utilizing those pieces in the mythology of this story, because this needs to be more tied to the prequels than it does to the originals. It needs to have that through line to it. And I thought that was really well done. So we have this introduction, the two characters talking by the Bunda tree. Again, that gives a little bit of reference to this poison. They bring that up as well. I like that when we introduce ourselves to Saul following them, we don't immediately get the answer of who. We don't immediately get it, that we just see this hooded figure when it's revealed to be Saul. It does seem to be a little antagonistic. And I'm wondering if that is a setup for what's going to happen with the relationship between these two characters as we go on, because it seems like they're feeding us information that maybe Saul isn't exactly giving all the information that, or giving the correct information that we believe. I like that was done. I thought, again, the building, the time with the mothers and such, and using that outside of kind of the witch ritual kind of thing, which, again, hit or miss for me. But again, using that to showcase that there were other versions of it. I like that there was a nod to midichlorians because they took a blood sample. I thought that was a clever little way to, again, not mention the M word, but kind of drive that wedge forward as well. Yeah, everything else, I thought the episode worked pretty darn well. It didn't start off strong, but I thought it finished strong with one exception. And this is something that, again, it's just more information needed that may be coming in the future. I don't know what May did to burn down this entire mountain, but I feel like we need more info. I don't always need to have everything laid out for me and explained. I don't think that's necessary in a lot of storytelling. But a child burning down a mountain in anger, I feel like we need to get her perspective of what happened. We need to see how that happened, because all of a sudden stuff's just burning, and I feel like that happened very quickly. So it's not that the episode didn't do that and I'm upset about it. It's that I hope that they come back to that at some point and show us May's perspective, because I feel like I need more indication as to what she actually did. Because the thing too is, May killed everyone. She wasn't a sociopath at the beginning. Well, I guess she was. She was, but all the same, she killed people she cared about. She said, I want to stay here with my family. Then she murdered all of them. So, I need a little bit more information as to what happened. Did she accidentally start it, and now it's too late to go back? I need to dive into that a little bit more. So I'm hoping episode 4 has that. I'm going to go and watch that right now. Or at least by the end of this season, that we get that information, because I think that's kind of important. So, anyway, those are my thoughts on the Acolyte episode 3. I think not being as strong as the first 2, but it is nice to have an episode that kind of dives in and gives us a different perspective to it. And again, brings back some of the characters we lost. I felt like that's kind of necessary in a lot of these mystery kind of shows, is diving into the characters before they got murder beamed. Yeah, so I like the episode, though. I thought it was pretty solid, and I like the direction of where the show's going. I still don't entirely have my answers, which is what I like in a mystery. So let me know your thoughts on the Acolyte episode 3 down in the comments section below. And kind of what do you think is going to happen with Kel Naka? Because again, we have a space now between the second and third potential victims. What's going to happen to Kel Naka? Is he going to be able to defend himself, or do you think May's going to take him out? Let me know in the comment section down below. You can also check out goatfilmreviews.com for my many written reviews. I'm going to be writing a non-spoiler review of the first 4 episodes on there. You can also check out Goat Film Reviews on Facebook. You can follow me at Almighty Goatman on Twitter, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Threads. And you can find my show, Kyle and Nick on Film, that I co-host with Nick Polachuk from the St. Paul Filmcast. We have new episodes of that show every single week. In the description for this video, too, there's a link to the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance, which is where you can find critics' reviews as well as mine. Dive into some other people that are in the Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. We'd love to have you check that out. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week for episode 4.